It's the Gary Neville Podcast from Anfield at the end of a game between Liverpool and Arsenal, which began gently but certainly didn't end that way, Gary. It'll be remembered, of course, for one quite stupendously good free kick.
Yeah. There was a narrative building before this game that Arsenal would wait till the last 20 minutes and then Eze and Ødegaard would come on and Arsenal's bench was stronger. But it was actually Liverpool that got stronger. Apart from the last 10 minutes after Liverpool scored when Arsenal obviously reacted, I think there was a point around 65, 66 minutes where the cops started singing and the ground started to come with them and you felt they smell this a little bit, they want this. Now, obviously, it was an absolutely spectacular strike. I mean, Raya's been the best goalkeeper in this league, along with the guy at the other end of the pitch, and not much beats him, but it was so special. I mean, when it was lining up 32 yards out, I'd said it's not Salah, it may be Szoboszlai, but never fancied him for 1 second to do what he did. And, you know, ordinarily, 99 times out of 100, I'm blaming the goalkeeper for any strike from that distance. But this was the one time where I wouldn't do, because it was just absolutely, it was ridiculous, that swerve and the power and the dip. Everything was perfect, and it goes in off the post. It was a violent shot. And Szoboszlai deserved it, because I thought he was outstanding from minute one right the way through. I don't think he'd give Martinelli a kick. I think Martinelli, to be fair, sort of almost refused him at points in the first half. And he was so positive when he kept going inside. He sometimes went inside to get on the ball off Konate. He went into midfield. I think at one point I saw him making a couple of runs into the box. So, yeah, it was a really great day for him. He's out of position, but against Newcastle he stood up on Monday night, and he stood up again today. And Liverpool stood up. You know, this was the team that couldn't defend. This was the team that couldn't keep a clean sheet. This was the team that were easy to play against. But in the big game where it mattered, they found something, they went deeper, and they sort of did become sort of tougher to play against. And I'm not going to sit here and say that they deserved it, but I always felt that with the crowd, the positivity in the last 25 minutes, Liverpool got stronger in the game, and I feel like Arsenal missed a chance in their first half.
Do you feel from Liverpool's perspective that that was a deliberately different game?
Yeah.
Or did Arsenal make it a different game? Liverpool set out to have that game, did they?
No, I mean, I think you know when you play against Arsenal. I mean, what we need to do today with Liverpool is give them huge credit for the way in which they defended set pieces. I'm not saying that Declan Rice's delivery was always on point, as it usually is, but there were probably 5 or 6 of them that were whipped underneath that 6 yard, underneath the bar and sort of into the 6 yard box. And Konate in particular headed 2 or 3. I think Joe Gomez headed 2 or 3 out at the end. And they really set up well, particularly in that first half when Arsenal had about 5 corners. The way in which they got their players in and around the penalty spot to aggressively, not foul, because I know that referees are really stamping down on it now, but to really sort of be body to body and harass and hustle. And that's what sometimes you have to do. You might be smaller in stature against bigger players. Arsenal would have landed the Giants there. They had 6 in the box that could head it. You've got Timber, Calafiori, Gabriel Saliba, but obviously Mosquera came on. Then you've got Gyökeres and you've got Marino. You have 6 big players in there. Liverpool have got 2 or 3. That's it. So they were outnumbered in terms of height. So what you've then got to do is ask your 5'10", your 5'11" players to be absolute pit bulls. And I'm looking like that really seriously, because I've been there in teams playing for United at Anfield or playing away at Wimbledon or Stoke, where you've got a height disadvantage. And it's no excuse just to walk off the pitch as Liverpool Football Club and say, oh, we got beat by set pieces because the other team are a little bit taller than us. Didums. You can't do that at Liverpool. You can't do that at Manchester United. There's no excuses. And I thought Liverpool today on those corners were absolutely outstanding, and they deserve great credit for that. The way in which they've worked on that this week. So they were a little bit more formidable in terms of their aggression. They were more solid and less practical. And also Arsenal are an outstanding defensive team. So the likes of Ekitike, Salah, Wirtz and Gakpo, 4 really good attacking players. They were playing against top-class defenders. I thought Calafiori, Gabriel, Mosquera when he came on, and Timber were outstanding for Arsenal. I really did think one-on-one they did a great job, and they nullified their opponents. And they've got done by a set piece in the end from a thingy, but that's not the problem for Arsenal, the defensive side of things. They've got Zubimendi, Rice sat in front of them who do a great job as well. They've got the goalkeeper who's fantastic. It's the intent. It's the intent. I don't think Arsenal played a bad game today. I think Mikel Arteta will say after 70 minutes, right, OK, let's try and go and get that goal. But there's something missing up here in these, I'm not going to say big matches, I'm going to say these big away games at difficult grounds. Merseyside is bloody tough to come. For Anfield, to Goodison Park, Newcastle is tough to go to. It's bloody tough up there. And it's tough also to go to Etihad because there's such a brilliant team with Pep Guardiola. But they're the grounds, if you're going to win the title, you're not always going to win there, but you have to win sometimes. You have to think you can go and win there. And it says something about your intent to go and win there. And I've seen this narrative for 3-4 years now of, a point away from home, it's early in the season, is good for Arsenal. Not always. If your intent to win and go and basically win the game is there and you draw, fair enough. But I think there's an element of not wanting to lose. Take the bloody handbrake off. You've got good players. You've got really good players in attacking areas. And I just feel like there isn't that commitment to go and disrupt and do something a bit special. And they've got to find that. They've got to find that. You've got to go and win games that you maybe not expected to. Because it can't always be that you're just going to go and basically deliver against the lower teams. That's not going to work. I know they've got a great record against the bigger teams, Arsenal, but this type of match is costing them.
Yeah. That's interesting, particularly in the context of the fact that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but as we were watching the game, first half, we felt that broadly speaking, or you felt, doesn't matter what I think, you felt that Arsenal, broadly speaking, had control of the game in the early stages and had a chance to make it theirs.
My last comments before half-time were that I feel like Arsenal, with a bit more risk, can go and win this game. Jamie Carragher, Theo Walcott and Roy Keane at half-time, if Arsenal can just be a bit more brave, the game's there for them. Arsenal, Liverpool are there for the taking, I think Jamie Carragher said. I felt that. Speaking to Mike Dean here, I said, look, if Arsenal want to do this, they want to step up and win at Anfield for the first time in 14 years, or go and win at the Etihad and only win once in I don't know how long. This is it. It's now. And I'm sat here again at the end of a game where they've not won and they've lost. And we all said it at half-time. Can they be a bit more expressive? In that first half where Liverpool were a bit nervous, they were a bit anxious, they weren't quite right, that's when you play through the lines. That's when you do go and get a goal. That's when you are braver, when you can smell that there's something out here that's not quite right. Because once their backs are up, by the way, and the noise is going behind that goal, you're in a bit of trouble. You're asking for trouble, should I say, as well. So when Liverpool's fans started singing, you're thinking, here we go. Now, we used to think coming here, when we played here, that we could get through that first 25 minutes when it was noisy and it was frantic, and then the calm started to come, and you'd be in the eye of the storm for a bit, and you say, right, now go and win the game, go and get your goal, punish them now when they've calmed down and the noise has gone and the circus is sort of cleared for a little while. But for this game today, it was very different. I thought Arsenal had control in the first half and they didn't have the intent. And it's all about intent and risk and thinking that you're a champion team. You're a champion team. It's a mentality. It's the edge. This club have had it in this last 3, 4, 5 years. They've won 2 titles. And they've got a mentality out there today, Van Dijk and a few of the others, that we're going to win this game. We're going to pinch this. And we're seriously going to go and win this game. And we're going to end up on 9 points. And that's what they've done.
It's fascinating psychology, because not many people are champions, and understand possibly within themselves what the difference is.
And that's why I'm annoyed, Peter, because I know this is the toughest ground to come to, the toughest place to win. And you take a draw here, snap. If you said a draw at Anfield every day of the week, you'd snap the hand off. However, if you're going to go and do it and get over the line and shock people, shock the world, shock the country that you are going to be champions and title winners, you've got to go and do something that surprises people that you've not done before. And that was today again for Arsenal. And we're sat here again at the end of the game. Look, it might come. I've tipped them for the title. I'm not going to change after today. I'm not. Because I think that there's an element of belief that I have, that I think, go on, Declan Rice, you can go and be that person who runs through. Ødegaard, you can be that player that scores in this game. Madueke, I thought, had a good game today, and I thought that Eze looked sharp when he came on. So there is the talent there to think they can go and do it, but they've got to go and do it. And it's thinking it, it's saying it, it's doing it.
Yeah. I'm just wondering what order to do things in, actually, because we've got a lot of transfer business to do. And maybe should we do Liverpool's first, and all the talk around Isak, Guehi? How are you reading that in the context of Liverpool?
Oh, I mean, Liverpool, 9 points. And the 2 games they've just played, I mean, the first game against Bournemouth was tough enough, we were here. But the 2 games they've just played, I mean, they had a right battle. up at St James's Park on Monday night, and to come out of there with a victory was incredible. And then to do this today, that must give them massive confidence. And if they can get Gay and Isak through the door, I mean, they're two starting players, and Isak's one of the top centre forwards in the world. He's a real player. He's the one player, Isak, that I've seen give Saliba and Gabriel and Van Dijk a real hard time over this last couple of seasons. I think he's really caused them problems. He's a different level player. So Ekitike's done really well. The boy Wirtz, we'll talk about him maybe. He looks like he's just finding his feet still, and how he can do that, we'll find out. He's played in 2 bloody difficult games against Arsenal and Newcastle. But Isak coming into that team there today, with Gay coming in as well. I thought Konate did his best 78 minutes of the season as well, which was good for him because he's had a tough few weeks. I thought Kirkes stuck at it. It was a tough game for him, but he stuck at it, and I thought Szoboszlai was fantastic at right back. So, look, for Liverpool to be on 9 points, the 2 games they've just had, and think that those two could be entering the building off the back end of the international break, they'll be absolutely buzzing and confident as hell.
Together with Wirtz, as you just mentioned him, so we may as well deal with him. I mean, he is very expensive, and I suppose he's bought as a point of difference, isn't he? Someone who can do something special. And you're speaking about him, I think, sympathetically.
Yeah,
because it's very, very difficult to come in and just have that magic moment, particularly given the fixtures, as you said, they've had. Yeah,
and he's had 2 difficult games. I think that anybody finds it difficult to find space against Arsenal. And obviously up at Newcastle on Monday night, he must have felt like a tornado had hit him. I mean, it was like a whirlwind up there, that game. It was incredible. So I can understand why that's just what the hell was that? I can imagine however they got back from St James's Park on Monday night, Wirtz is probably thinking, bloody hell, that's the Premier League. But it's interesting thinking about him, and you asked me about him in the first half, and I was watching him quite a bit in the second half because Liverpool had the ball at the back. And I'm thinking, sometimes you hear expressions, don't you, by coaches, and sometimes you say, he's always on the move. And I'm watching Wirtz, and he's always on the move. And I'm thinking, bloody stand still for a second. The opposite. I'm thinking stand still. I'm watching him there sort of like drift between the lines. I'm thinking he's probably moving a bit too quick. Because I always think sometimes when you're playing in the pocket and in the hole, and I used to see it from a different side. I used to see it from being a defender, and there might be a player that you can see just drifting in the pocket. And I used to think that when they were moving, it caught the eye of the defenders, it caught the eye of the midfield players, and they were easier to mark. I always thought when they just walked and drifted sometimes and they looked disinterested, and then all of a sudden they made a quick movement, that was when you got done in the pocket. So there's 2 things. One, I think he's jogging across the line, and he can't then really sort of fool or kid people when he gets on the ball. So that's just a little bit of sort of smartness and intelligence. And then the other thing is, I think just the element of being higher up the pitch by 5 or 6, 7 yards and not going too deep. That means that the midfield players for the opposition can pick you up easily and just shield in front. Almost feel like the centre backs want to come in to get you rather than it actually be the central midfield players are marking you. I think to me they're the 2 things that, look, I'm not a coach, but I think I pretty much know what would cause me a problem. I played against the likes of Gianfranco Zola and Bergkamp and Del Piero for Juventus, those types of players, Zidane, that don't play in those areas. And when they're walking, you're thinking, right, what's he going to do? He's trying to kid me here. Is he going to make a movement left? He's going to make a movement right? He's going to go deeper? He's going to make a run through? You don't know what he's going to do when they're walking or when they're looking a little bit disinterested. When they're jogging, it's actually harder then to turn and change direction. You understand what I mean? So for me, I just think he maybe is a little bit predictable at this moment in time, maybe a little bit deep, but it's very early in his Liverpool career. But I think there'll be Liverpool fans, there'll be 50, 60,000 in here today, and there'll be Liverpool coaches thinking, okay, he needs a bit of coaching. He's not the finished article at 115 million. He's a young lad. He needs work. He needs coaching. He needs and he's got the right man there in Arne Slot because he does get the best out of players. So yeah, I just think 2 very tough games to play in. He's shown glimpses, but I think there's an element of him fitting in. And if he has Isak up front in front of him and Ekitike, obviously in terms of either of them, but if Isak comes in, I mean, they're going to score an absolute bucket load of goals. And you've got Salah, I didn't even mention Salah, who had one of his probably most difficult games I've ever seen today. I mean, that was him in the second half. You're expecting him, that little touch and that little sort of, push into the far corner. His touch was off today, and it was surprising.
Yeah. Lot to get through, and people are going to want to hear you talk about Manchester United this week, I know. But before then, let's finish what you might call the big 3, if we're allowed to say that.
Yeah.
And just in brief, Manchester City have lost
Yeah.
today. There's a question, I think, obviously we weren't able to see much of the game, but around their goalkeeping situation, which has become a topic.
Yeah.
How do you read their business and their current state of affairs?
I actually watched most of the game. I came up here early today. I tend to at Anfield just to get clear of everything. It's got a nice position. I didn't think James Trafford was the problem today. I thought that he looked a little bit in fear last week. I thought he looked a little bit like startled against Tottenham. I didn't think he was the problem today. He made a world-class save. But one thing before the game, and I was down there, and the teams came up. And when I look at Matheus Nunes at right back, Aït-Nouri is too early to assess, but he's a new left back. And I look at Kusanov at centre back. I think, all right, okay, Brighton have got a chance. And a few years ago, I mean, obviously on the bench was Ake, Akanji, and Diaz. So if that back four read Stones, Akanji, Diaz, Ake, you'd look at those four. I know they're a bit older in years now, and you think, there's four monsters there, four beasts. They're not going to give you much of a chance. So there's an element, obviously Kyle Walker's left, long ago. But there's an element of looking at City's back four now and thinking, we've got a chance here. Now, Rodri was back in today, but I actually thought in the first half, Ireland could have had 2 or 3 and the game could have been out of sight. So let's put it into context. But the fact that it's not out of sight and it's 1-0, I never felt City were going to keep a clean sheet or were comfortable looking at keeping a clean sheet. When City were 1-0 up 2 or 3 years ago, you could almost write the game off. They keep the ball, pop it around, suffocate teams with possession, and eventually the team would have to do something, and they would either see out a 1-0 win or they'd go and win 2 and 3. That's not this Manchester City now, because with Aït-Nouri at left back, with Matheus Nunes at right back or Rico Lewis, and with Kusanov in the middle, then that's not a clean sheet back four anymore. And it's giving teams a chance, it's giving teams encouragement, which means it puts pressure on the midfield and the forwards to score 2 and 3. And if you only score 1, you're going to the bloody nose, and that's what's happened today. And well done to Brighton. They just keep. We said on the gantry, didn't we? Brighton bring these players on, and you think to yourself, if you go and commentating on Brighton today, you wouldn't know half the players. They just seem to produce like a conveyor belt of players you don't know, and then you get to know them, and then they leave, and then you get to know them again, and then they leave. It's same every single season. But Gruder, the boy, it was a special goal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I love the little Welbeck little touch off. Great day for James Milner. To score the penalty. You think about how old he is and sort of the career he's had, obviously against his old club. But, well done to Brighton, because it had been a difficult start to the season for them. And brilliant for them. But for City, I didn't think Trafford was the problem today. I think it may come back a little bit in moments where he's young and he's not quite sort of, mature enough to be at the level of Ederson, who's been an outstanding keeper for the last 5, 6, 7 years. But that back four, it's interesting to see what Pep's doing. He's got 3 stalwarts on the bench today, and if he thinks they're past their best years or they're not quite fit or not quite ready, and you're seeing Kusanov and you're seeing Aït-Nouri and you're seeing Matheus Nunes, a lot of Premier League teams will score goals against City with that back four. They will, just simple as that, because it's not as anywhere near the level that it has been over this last 5, 6 years.
Okay, Chelsea clearly had some good fortune yesterday.
Yeah.
We've all seen that. But their misfortune was Liam Delap getting injured.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Jackson
Was
flying.
it a hamstring?
I think so, sorry. I would need to be told that.
Yeah, but you've mentioned Nicholas Jackson. Sorry to cut across you, Peter, but the idea of sort of sending him over to Bayern Munich on loan.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
And the fact that Chelsea have obviously sort of got a if it is, look, it must be a bad injury. But if he's out for 4 to 6 weeks, which a normal hamstring would be, I know Roy mentioned last week about physios don't like pundits talking about injuries because they haven't got a clue what they're talking about. But look, if Delap's out for 4 or 6 weeks, why would you stop a loan? That could have happened at any time. I can see why Nicholas Jackson is hurting and bitter. But I can also see why Chelsea as a football club have got to protect themselves. The deal's not gone through, but you've sent the kid over there on the plane. You've accepted the deal. You've said go and do it. And then this happens. Not sure how you get around it, because the reality of it is he would have needed to go over. It's obviously the transfer window's closing tomorrow. It's an unfortunate situation where I can see both sides. I think I saw something earlier that his agent is saying, there's no playing back. Well, there will be if Chelsea don't change their mind. Bayern Munich talking to other strikers potentially, thinking the deal's off. But yeah, I can feel for Nicholas Jackson, because yeah, I can see why he's sore.
We seem to be in a transfer window where that included, and that's sort of the flip side of what I'm about to say, kind of all's fair in love and war. And I wonder if Chelsea are playing hardball with Jackson now, because they can, how you feel about the Isak Wieser situations.
Well, how long have we got? We've got 24 hours, haven't we, till the actual transfer window closes, and they're leaving it right to the death, aren't they? I don't know what's happening with Isak, because you would have expected the noise to have started after Monday night's game had finished at St James's Park, wouldn't you? I mean, why haven't they just, if they were going to do it, why haven't they done it in the last few days? Are Liverpool waiting and saying, look, come to us? I mean, this is a club, to be fair, that masters at transfers in this last 5, 6, 7 years. So they're not going to have the pants pulled down, Liverpool. And Newcastle are rich. Their owners are rich. And to be fair, when you're dealing with rich people, they don't like being messed around either. When you're dealing with proud people, you don't like being messed around. But for Eddie Howe, he'll want his squad and this situation over. You know, he'll want Visser in. I can't pronounce the boy's name from Germany that they've done the deal on. Voltemade, yeah. So they've got one in, but they need Visser. So there's a lot going to happen in this next few hours. I don't think there'll be many club secretaries sleeping tonight in the Premier League. I think they'll be up all night. But yeah, you'd think it'd all get done, wouldn't you? But again, I'm not quite sure. I understand why it didn't get done before the Newcastle-Liverpool game on Monday. That was a hotbed enough as it was. But I expected Wednesday, Thursday it start to move, and it hasn't moved. And we're now Sunday evening, and it's still not moving. And I'm sure Arne Slot, who's on that screen there laughing and smiling, is being asked about it by Patrick Davison, and probably pushing it back and saying, I haven't got any clue what's going on, even though he will.
And on the other screen as we talk, Aston Villa and Palace have just walked out at Villa Park. Villa without Emi Martinez keeping goal this evening.
Where's he going?
Well, that's what I'm about to ask you.
Look, I was at Old Trafford yesterday, and it's a well-told story. I'm not going to sort of start going into a sort of emotional language, but it's just really clear that Manchester United need to bring a goalkeeper in. They weren't brilliant yesterday, United, but I thought they should have been 2-3 up at half-time. I thought they missed some big chances. I thought they were far better than Burnley. But going in at 1-0 that Burnley are going to come and have a period, and obviously then you end up with a nervy second half, because there's just an anxiousness around United at this moment in time. And late on it was a big relief. It was a big relief, and it was a much needed win. Doesn't sort of clear the clouds completely. I think they'll come back in a couple of weeks. There's big games against City and against Chelsea coming up in the Premier League. But after Grimsby on Wednesday night, where I actually thought the manager got it wrong on Wednesday night, not necessarily in the fact that he didn't watch penalties or the fact that he was sort of his interviews after were a bit strange. But I think going playing two young centre-backs at Grimsby tells me that you weren't respecting what Grimsby are. I know League 2 football is a lot lower level than Premier League, but I've watched 250 games, and I'd watched Grimsby the week before against Walsall, because we were playing Walsall for Salford. And I thought, as soon as he saw the young two centre-backs either side of Harry Maguire, I thought they'll have a bloody tough night, them two kids. If you'd have put a 21-year-old, 20-year-old Gary Neville in there and Phil Neville the other side of Steve Bruce, and you'd have pumped balls on top of us into that channel and diagonals at Grimsby, Sir Alex Ferguson wouldn't have done that. You pay respects to teams. You physically match them, particularly in defensive areas. And I think it was a tough game to put those two young kids in. That was the biggest problem I felt in the game, and gave Grimsby encouragement. But after that, they get knocked out on penalties. The manager does a bizarre interview. He says some things that make you think he's all over the place and that he's going to resign. And he explained that his emotions are all over the place after games, and he thinks a lot of things, and that's fair enough. We know that from him. Yesterday was a good moment for him in the end. But it's bloody hard work winning football matches like that. And coming back to it, the key question that you ask, if your goalkeeper is making mistakes, it undermines everything that you do. And that ground is the most unforgiving for goalkeepers. The fans get behind managers, the fans get behind all the players. But I've said it before about the Manchester United goalkeeper spot, and I'll say it again, the toughest position in English football, bar none. That is the position that gets, if you give goals away at United and you're a goalkeeper, you'll get scrutinised heavily. Centre forward, just behind it, I think, in terms of if you're a young striker or a striker that's not scoring goals. Going back to Gary Birtles or Andy Cole when he first came, or other strikers that basically sort of haven't quite, Diego Forlan, you get put under a lot of pressure when you don't quite hit the target enough or you don't score enough. So there's a lot of pressure on Sesko. That's building a little bit as well by the fact that yesterday I was in the stadium and Cunha went off, which was a bad moment for United losing him. And everyone, I think, thought Sesko was coming on, and he brought Xerxes on, which I can understand it from a positional perspective, but there was just that expectation that Sesko would come on. So, look, for United, a lot to think about, but you have to have a goalkeeper that's got a massive personality and character. And it's not about the fact that won't make a mistake. A Manchester United goalkeeper, a Liverpool goalkeeper, any goalkeeper will make mistakes. It's how you make mistakes, how you recover from them, how you look in your body language and how you look authoritative. And I have to say the two that they've got are not going to fill that. So they have to get a goalkeeper in my mind. I thought it for a number of months. Every United fan thinks it, and it needs to. And the midfield is equally as big a problem, by the way, but I think that's going to be too much of an ask. But that's a big problem in midfield as well. There's holes in there like you wouldn't believe.
So if I were a Manchester United fan, I suppose the big question I'd ask you, eyeball to eyeball, after a horrible, horrible night for United at Grimsby, and then a little bit of relief, as you say, is kind of, Gary, is it going to be okay?
I don't know,
How do you
Peter.
feel about that? How do you feel about Ruben Amorim and his body language and where United are at?
Peter, I was so positive after the first game because of the level of performance, with a bit of caveat that, look, it's one game. And I thought the Fulham game was a big game in going cementing it and hitting it home. And look, they could again have had a couple of goals, I thought, in the first 10 minutes. I thought they started really well against Fulham. But then some of the old sort of wounds started to open up in the second half for United. And then you start to think, okay, well, it's an away game. Fulham are a decent side. You saw them at Chelsea yesterday. They could have gone 1-0 up and it could have been a difficult game for Chelsea. But then you go to Grimsby and you think, right, just be solid at Grimsby. And I think he changed the team too much, to be honest with you, at this moment in time, thinking about the actual, I mentioned before, the two young centre-backs either side of Harry Maguire. No, don't do that. Maybe bringing them on with 20 minutes to go. He's always changing the back three. So I don't know that they're going to be okay because of what's happened in the last 10, 12 years, because of the emotions that are there, because of the games they've got coming up in the next couple of weeks. But I do hope so, because I think there are elements of the way in which they play that you can work on. But then there are aspects of in the last week whereby Fulham, Grimsby and Burnley yesterday, there were parts of those games where you were looking at them and thinking, it's a worry. It's a worry. And they're going to get opened up again. There's a lot better teams than Fulham and Burnley in this league. And there's a lot better team than Grimsby in this league. And they've had problems against those three teams. So it's a concern. And we won't truly know, but it's worrying about how quickly it can go from being quite positive after Arsenal to going like that. So it was a good win yesterday. The fans left, I think, thinking, well, we got the winner. It's always a nice thing to get a winner late on. Thought the lad from Burnley, definitely, he was just a bit silly, wasn't he? Just holding on for too long. But let's just wait and see in the next couple of weeks. Big game against Chelsea coming up in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. We've covered a lot there. So maybe just in conclusion, we've reached the first punctuation point in the Premier League season. 3 weeks in, what are you thinking?
Great win for West Ham.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of trouble there. So I think we need just to give them a special mention. Jarrod Bowen, obviously, again, scoring after what happened the other night. So that was a big, big win for them today. Everton.
Of course.
Two really good wins for Everton.
Yeah. And Sunderland.
Sunderland, very good. Look, there's been a lot of good things. I think, the Premier League's exciting. It gives you something, whether it's the VAR, the referees, the goals today, the teams losing matches that you don't expect, players not quite living up to sort of the standard that you thought they would be, and maybe you're thinking after 3 games you're sort of hearing them being written off, and that's what we do in the media. All these things happen in the Premier League, and I've actually thought it for quite a bit now, and whether it's just this September one, but this September, October and November international, and I've been an international player and an international coach, so I've been on the other side of it where you really enjoy these periods, but it does disrupt quite heavily the Premier League to the point where you never get any rhythm, and it would be nice just to see another 3 or 4 games, wouldn't it, in the next few weeks, and maybe bunch the actual sort of international games together maybe in November. I'm not sure how they do it, but look, that's not for us. There's enough fixture problems as it is without us contributing to them. But it would be nice at the start of a season to see more than just 3 games and then a break. But for some teams, a break will be, I think, quite welcome.
Sure. Well, have a good
Thanks,
one then,
Peter.
Gary.
Yeah,
Thank
enjoy
you.
it. Thank
Cheers.
you.